This is Dr. Owen Anderson, and we're continuing in our discussion of ethics and the necessary conditions for morality. Last time we were looking at whether or not God is necessary for morality, and this time we're going to look at whether or not personal immortality is necessary for morality. What is personal immortality? This is different than immortality, the emphasis on personal immortality. You could be immortal because your name is remembered forever. This is sort of what Achilles wanted, immortality by being remembered for what he did. And somehow that'll make you feel better about death. Like, even though I'm dying and will stop existing now, I will at least be remembered in the future. And you can see how people try for that kind of immortality, right? With buildings that have their name on it, or donations, and you get a plaque put up with your name on it, something to have your name on it. And people remember, oh yeah, I remember that guy. But that's not the same as personal immortality. Personal immortality means you continue to exist. So yeah, a legacy is kind of like what the first ones, like having a legacy, having made some impact. And the question is, do you want it to have been a good impact? Like you can say, I don't care what kind of impact it is, as long as it's an impact. And someone who led a quiet but decent life, they had no impact. And someone else says, yeah, but I started a war, and everyone remembers me because I was a really nasty fellow. So at least I had a legacy, an impact. So, well, wait, that's not the kind I want. And so people could debate that, say, why not? At least I did something. But we're wondering about personal immortality, our own continued existence. Death is not the end of existence. And if there is no personal immortality, there's no future. You don't have a future. Think about that for a minute. You might think, well, I've got the next 60 years. That's a pretty long time, which it really isn't. Think of all the time before you lived and all the time after you lived, and how the time you live is such a small dot in that line. So if you don't have personal immortality, then you don't have a future, whether it's in 60 years or in 60 minutes that you stop existing. There's no future beyond that for you. And if there's no future beyond that, then there would be no purpose for the things you do. You may as well do one thing as well as another. I was kind of getting at that when I was joking about having a legacy. And it doesn't matter what the legacy is, as long as you had one. So without a future, there's no purpose. Let's say you say, well, no, I want to be a nice person, and I'm gonna feed lots of people. And then you all die and don't exist, and that's the end. And someone else says, well, I'm going to be a nasty person. I'm going to steal food from people. And you steal lots of food from people. You're all hungry, and then you die. In both scenarios, everyone ends up in the same situation, dead. There's no purpose to doing either one or the other. None of you exist anymore. And if there's no purpose, there can't be any goal for doing things. What would your goal be? Before I stop existing, I want to enjoy myself as much as possible. That's what Epicurus wanted, Epicurean living. Just do whatever pleases you then, as much as possible. Have as much fun as you can. But really, there's no purpose to that either. So if there's no future, there could be no purpose. And put those down as you're taking notes. If there's no personal mortality, there's no future. And if there's no future, there could be no purpose. And if there's no purpose, there could be no good or goal, no highest end. So in that sense, personal immortality is necessary for morality, for distinguishing good and evil, having some highest end that you can achieve, and without which you wouldn't have the distinction between good and evil. Now, that doesn't necessarily prove there is personal mortality, because someone could be willing to bite the bullet and say, yeah, that's right, but there isn't personal mortality, so morality is an illusion. And lots of people do say that. That is something like what Epicurus might have said. Morality is just invented by society in order to make you conform. And the true person, last time I mentioned Dostoevsky's Raskolnikov in Crime and Punishment, and he experimented with, could he be a super person? The super person is no longer under the rules of society. And the way he decided to prove that he was no longer under the rules of society is by breaking a very serious rule, murder. And not murdering someone who he was angry at, but murdering a relative stranger who's helpless, an older woman. And not murdering her at a distance, like sniping someone far away. You don't have to deal with the blood. Bludgeoning her to death. That would prove that he's above with an axe. That would prove he's above society. He's not conforming to the rules of society. And that's what Crime and Punishment is about. Does he actually escape morality? And can we escape morality? So someone might be willing to bite the bullet and say there's no morality, but then what we'll do is we'll watch them. Could be peek over the fence and observe them. And you see, oh, they're still living as if there's a distinction between good and evil. They can't escape it. And however much they might talk and say, yeah, that's just mere convention, once it comes home to them and something is done wrong to them, they'll start complaining. So we're going to look for a proof as well, just like we did that with God's existence. And we've taken that in steps. So far, we're just on this step. Something has existed from eternity. Now we're on to the next step. What has existed from eternity? What is it? And so now personal mortality. Is there a soul? And that's a good one to discuss. Do you have a soul? And how would you know if you have a soul? Like, where is the soul? Is it, we talked about that last time, is it like in the head, and when you die, it comes out of your nose and goes up in the air? What do you think? How would you know if you have a soul or not? Is the soul like a wispy version of you? Like it has your same kind of shape, but it looks like a cloud. You can see through it. And then you could sell it if you want. Let's say someone comes along and they offer you, I don't know, $5 for your soul. Would you sell your soul for $5? Why not? $10. I bet they go up to 10. Not much higher than 10 though. Well, it's your soul. What are you doing with your soul? So you say, well, I'm worth more than $10. Yeah, you are, but not your soul. What do you do with it? I mean, you don't even know if you have one. And some guy comes along and says, I'll buy it from you for $10. It's like, all right, for all you know, there isn't even a soul at all. So the poor sucker's losing $10 for nothing. Now, how about that? How about if we agree to do that for class? We could have a little paper, and if we could pass it around. You could sign it. It says, I don't know if I have a soul, but if I do, I'm selling it to you for $10. And I'm sensing hesitancy and seeing that in the comments. Like, wait, no, I don't want to sell my soul. Well, again, you may not be doing anything with it. And people buy all kinds of dumb things. So why does this guy want it for $10? Well, who knows? Maybe he's an idiot. You know, he shows up. He's in red pajamas with a pitchfork, and he says, "I want to buy your soul." A couple horns coming out of his head. And for all you know, he's not all together there. And so, sure, pal, you want my soul for $10? Here you go. What would you do with it? Would you ask that question? Depends. Are you going to treat it well? Hey, when you sell a car, you don't ask the person if you're going to treat it well, right? Hey, it's theirs now. If they want to use it for demolition derby, isn't that up to them? Yeah, you might tell them, hey, I don't want to sell it to you. Now that I know there's interest for a soul, this is on eBay, and you can start bidding on it. It might go above 10, it might go up to like $11.25. You got that whole extra $1.25, which you can buy a soda with. And I wonder if souls increase or decrease with age. Like wine, are they like wine or a car? I would guess they're more like a car. You don't want an old, dilapidated soul. That's why I can't sell my soul. It's old, and I've built up so much bad karma. When I go to play, there's a place where you can go up north, and they'll take a picture of your aura, and they were taking a picture of my aura, and the camera person just looked shocked. I said, "What's wrong? Is your camera broken?" And I said, "No, I've never seen this color of darkness before surrounding your soul. You have so much bad karma." So yeah, I'm trying to unload my soul. Like, hey, you want to buy my soul? That's great. Here you go. And it comes with all this bad karma as well. So all that's to say, there's a lot of misunderstanding about what a soul is. That's why we can poke some fun at it. People don't even know what it is, let alone if they could sell it or not, let alone if they won't. But if there isn't one in this sense, that's what we're going to begin to do. Just like we took time to define what it means for something to be eternal, so we'll take time to define the soul. And so someone will say, look, it's not a physical thing. Right, good. That's the first step. There are two kinds of things we're defining here. And sometimes you might use these words differently outside of class or in other classes. So for our class, you have to remember to pay attention to the definitions. You use the word physical, or that's probably the same as what I would call material. And in philosophy, matter means what has size, what has extension in space. So there could be something very small or something very large. That doesn't change it. However small you want to make it, if you make it like 0.000 a bazillion zeros, 1, it still has some size. So material things have size. And then there are non-material things that don't have size, like an idea. Couldn't have a jar of ideas. You could have a jar of pieces of paper that you wrote your ideas on, but that's pieces of paper that you wrote your ideas on. It's not the same as ideas. So which is the soul like? Is the soul a material thing? And a lot of the jokes I was making were like that, right? It's a mist that comes out of your nose when you die. It's like a wispy form of you. Like when Obi-Wan appeared to Luke at Dagobah. He was kind of like a green, translucent Obi-Wan Kenobi. So those are still physical things. And so when you asked, is the soul physical? Yeah, it would seem that it isn't physical. When we're asking about the soul, we're asking about something that's not physical. And we're asking about something that's so constantly with us, we may not even pay attention to it, sort of like your nose on your face. You can see it, but then you realize, oh yeah, I don't usually pay attention to my nose. But there it is. So when we're asking about the soul, we're asking about ourself. What does it mean to be me? And that I'm not identical to my body. You could have parts of your body removed and you're still you. You could have parts sewn on. You could have like, I like having one head. What if I had two heads and you sewed another head on? Well, I'm not sure that would work. Could you have a head transplant? Like, which is still you? You have a head transplant and you mix and match the two new bodies and put them together. Say, I'm over here. No, I'm over here. Like it's wherever your mouth goes, right? Because your body can't say, I'm over here. Yeah, that's so the non-physical. Now, interestingly, if the soul is an idea, that sort of proves the point because ideas aren't physical. So the soul is something non-physical, and it's the individuality, yeah. But it's not something they came up with any more than like ancient people came up with 2 + 2 is 4. They did. They discovered that. You discover it. You don't come up with it. So coming up gives the impression that it's like it's not real or something, as opposed to, no, the individual is very real. And in one way, for each of us, there's nothing more real than the self. I am. You may have heard that before. I think, therefore I am, from Descartes. So we have that confidence in my own existence. And if I was to tell you, you don't exist, but the moon is made of cheese, you would doubt the second one, saying, I don't think that's true, but you couldn't doubt the first one. Let's say you tried to doubt the first one. You said, no, I don't think I really exist. Well, notice you're saying it in the doubt. In technical terms, that's called a self-referential absurdity, right? You're saying, I, the one who's speaking now, doesn't exist, where existing is a prerequisite for saying I don't exist. So you exist, and that's where we get to this idea of personal mortality, where I was going over the body, how you could lose parts of the body, and the you seems to go with your mouth, right? Hey, it's still me. Like if you're a head in a jar and a body in a jar, but your mouth speaks. So what if you like did a from here up? Which one would it be? Like it's still me down here. So do you? This is the phrase. Maybe the phrase personal immortality didn't register. Do you continue to exist? And if you don't continue to exist, then you have no future. All you accomplish, whether you decide to get a degree or not, all comes to the same end. And if you have no future, there's no purpose in the things you do. It doesn't get you anywhere. And you might say, well, it gives me a legacy. It helped other people. Yeah, but eventually, in not that short of a time, the whole planet is gone. They're all dead. Your legacy still comes to nothing. So you continue to exist. Now that makes it sort of humorous. Earlier, when I was talking about selling your soul, it was as if it was something in addition to you. Like you, and you have this thing called a soul, and you could sell it to someone. And instead of saying, no, you are your soul. So selling your soul would be like selling you. Now, when you ask yourself the question, someone put this up here, where do you go when you die? If that's a spatial question, then it'd be odd, right? Where does the non-physical go physically? Instead, it seems to be a question about the condition of one's soul. And now, another good piece for your notes, we seem to have two senses of the word death. So far, we have been talking about physical death, when your body stops living. Now, a little side note for your notes. We'll put a little arrow with a parentheses. When your body dies, does it stop existing? Like, no, it doesn't, right? That's why we have a whole industry that has to deal with dead bodies. You're not like Yoda. And when you die, you kind of pull the cover up and you say, come closer. There is another Skywalker. And then you die and your body disappears and no one has to deal with cremation or burial or any of those questions. But when you die, your body doesn't stop existing. It eventually, and in not that long, it decomposes. But the stuff of your body still exists. So, too, with your soul, why would you think your soul stops existing when your body dies? Neither your body nor your soul stop existing. So then the question of death isn't one of existence. You continue to exist. The question is the condition, right? Your body dies because it's broken. Something, the cardiovascular system, especially the heart, stops beating and you die. It broke. Could your soul be broken? And so at death, it would still be in that condition it was before death. Your soul could be dead in that sense. So that doesn't mean the soul doesn't exist. It means the soul isn't doing what it was made to do. Just like when your body dies, it stops doing what it was made to do. The heart stops beating. The heart was meant to beat, not to not beat. So it stops. So in the same way, your uh, soul might not be doing what it's supposed to do. And that could be happening now. So you could say that. You could say uh, there's physical death and physical life, and there's spiritual death and spiritual life. And one could have a dead spirit or soul. Those mean the same for our purposes right now. So then the question isn't where will you go? The question is where are you now? What's your condition like now? Have you ever noticed that in life, where sometimes life seems more full than at other times? Like you feel like you're really living. And not only that, say, wow, now I'm really living. There's times when people report this that they feel dead. Life has no comfort for me anymore. I need to depart. I can't bear it. So they feel that spiritual death and report that. And that's important for what we're doing, because we're going to be talking about life and death, ethics, good and evil. And what do you think of a soul? So if the soul is, you say, I think, therefore I am, the think is what the soul does. Like the beat is what the heart does. The thinking is what the soul does. And that's not the brain, right? You could look around in your brain and you won't find any ideas in there. So the thinking, and what do you think of a soul then that doesn't even doesn't know things? And not complex things, because you could say, well, I can excuse a soul that doesn't know complex things. They're hard to know. But what about a soul that doesn't even know basic, simple things? Is it really alive? What about a soul that doesn't even know what is good? You could have baby souls, like undeveloped souls, but then that's what you call them. You say that's an undeveloped soul. What if you're 20 and you're still a baby soul? Say you're 20 years old and you just still don't know what is good? Even ancient people knew that. What happened? So you only get a little bit of time to know what is to be a baby soul. I'm guessing at ages there. If I threw out 20 and you're 20, it's not because I know you're 20. I have no idea. I'm just throwing out ages. Yeah. Once you're like 25, 30, 35, and you're still living as a baby, I wonder if parents ever feel that way. He's still bringing home his laundry. He's 35. He still has me doing his laundry. So that might be autobiographical for all you know. I'm talking about myself. So yeah, does it start to realize why that would be a problem? If you're 35, 20, how about 12? I'd start around 12 or 13. You should know what is good by then. You don't get to be a baby anymore. You're growing up. You're maturing. You're at the beginning. By 13, you're at the beginning of maturing into adulthood. And you should know these things. And yeah, common sense is sort of like that. Someone who doesn't have common sense, you'd be surprised about. Someone who's 20, 25, 30, 35, you say, wow, it seems like common sense that you do that. You're not doing that. Now, so the soul and being spiritually dead, does that seem like a problem then? I wonder, what if you had a society of people who are mostly spiritually dead? What I mean, I don't mean that they're, because it doesn't come on a spectrum in that sense, like when you're dead, you're dead. But what I mean is, most of the people in the society are spiritually dead. Do you think they would notice it? Or would it just become the norm? And do you think that they would identify the things that led to it, like I'm doing right now, not knowing what is good? This is leading to that condition of not knowing what is good. Would they identify that as a problem, or would they excuse themselves and say, oh yeah, you don't need to know what is good. It's really hard to know. They would all give each other excuses because they would realize that if I point out with this guy that he's not doing the right thing, but I'm not either, then he'll point that out about me. So I'll tell him it's all right that you don't know what is good. And then he'll give me the same pass. He'll tell me it's all right also. So then you'd have a whole society living that way, as if we can't know what is good and excusing each other. Yeah, that's why you might call that a dark age. Exactly. That's what the term dark refers to, as ignorance, not knowing. And it's an analogy to the sight, because if you can't see and you go into a room with a lot of furniture, you're going to bump into it, stub your toe, knock things over. You're in darkness. You're ignorant of what's in the room. And so it's an analogy from sight to the mind. I don't know what exists. I don't know what is real. And so I'm going through in darkness, bumping into things and knocking them over. It's a dark age. So part of the problem with the dark age, what I'm getting at, is you could be living in one and not know it. It's after the fact when you look back and you say, wow, that was not good, right? That you realize, wow, that was a dark age. So I'm at least putting a question mark by our current age. And all of this is coming back from personal immortality and what the soul is. The need for personal immortality. Souls are forever. That's personal immortality. And that's why the religions of the world debate that, and differences are precisely about that, because that's a given. And the question is, well, what is it? What is the soul? What happens to it? For example, we talked last time about something must be eternal. This time we're talking about the soul. Some religions say that the soul, your soul, has existed from eternity. You have that property of being God. Others say, no, you're created by God. God created you. You had a beginning. And you can see how those would give two very different ways of living, which is the study of ethics, which is why I'm bringing it up in ethics class. If you're eternal with God, or you are God, that will produce a very different life than if you're created by God. So we need to know those things before we can go on to figure out what is good and not good. What is the soul? What is the nature of reality? So there are a few more here. We're going to move on from the soul, unless you have questions. We'll be coming back to the soul. I want to add to that freedom. These are the necessary conditions for morality. Freedom. If there is no freedom, there can be no morality. The good, as the end in itself, is achieved through choice. You choose the good. And so if there's no freedom, there can be no choice, and therefore the good is not achievable. Now, what are some scenarios, some perspectives that would say there's no freedom? Probably none of you in here were alive when the movie Braveheart came out. Is that right? It's like on the Turner Classics Network now for you. And Braveheart said that. Freedom! They can take our lives, but they can never take our freedom. Well, what is freedom? What are some scenarios? Well, if you're just a bag of chemicals, then you have no freedom. Chemicals aren't free. Chemicals obey laws governing chemicals. So that's an example. Reductionism, what is sometimes called materialistic reductionism, the view that says only the material world exists, only things that have extension exist, and that's all you are. You're a collection of things that we can chart on the periodic table. That's all you are. And so then if we just knew precisely enough the chemicals going on in your body, we could show you what you're going to do next. So there is no freedom, there's no choice. Or another version of it might be that you're just the sum total of your past. So that what you do now is just due to your upbringing. If we knew how you developed, if we knew about the diaper changing stage of your life, we would know all about what you're going to do now. So we just have to, we put you on a couch, tell you to try to relax and go back in your memory and remember your mother. What did you think of your mother? And then from that, we'll draw all kinds of conclusions about what you do now. So that's another kind of determinism. If there's no freedom, then instead of saying, let's go back and remember what you did with your mother, what you thought of your mother, you could say, let's go back and just think right now, not go back anywhere. Let's just think right now. What do you believe is good? Why don't you know? We don't have to go back into your past. So freedom. And the idea of the conservation of matter. Yeah, there is that. Conservation of energy, matter, but that's within matter. What we were asking about earlier was if there are some things that are not material. We have two examples so far. Ideas, but ideas aren't just in themselves. Ideas are in a mind. And so another example of the non-physical thing is a soul, mind, self, spirit. All four of those in our class mean the same thing. Other contexts, it might mean something different, but here, you don't measure them. You get out a tape measure and say, your mind is 18 inches by 2 inches by 32 inches. Say, that's a big idea. We don't mean that physically. Like, wow, that idea is 8 feet by 20 feet. That's a big idea. So back to freedom. Are you free? Now, you might not be free in many respects. What we're talking about specifically is free to choose what is good. But there are a lot of ways in which you're not. You're probably just the output of pop culture, right? Pop culture says jump, you say how high. Pop culture says this is a best-selling album, you say where can I buy it? See how that's the reverse, of course, right? Because people bought it as best-selling. But that's not how it works. I'll tell you it's going to be best-selling, and so you'll buy it. And then it is best-selling. Who's one of those super popular people nowadays? What are those, the NSYNC? You all listen to NSYNC, is that right? Yeah, that's right. Good. That's fine. I wasn't looking there. Did you put that down before I said it? Oh, all right. No, I was gonna say, wow, two great minds think alike. Yeah, you're all probably listening to NSYNC and uh, Britney Spears. Those seem to be popular among the kids these days. Uh, yeah, that's right. Well, they're actually still touring, right, with New Kids on the Block. So that's actually a possibility, I think. But I don't know if that's actually for your age group, right? That's probably for like 50-year-olds who want to go see uh, New Kids on the Block. So where were we here? You guys got me on pop culture. Oh yeah, if you're really free or not, or if you just do what your culture tells you to do. The output of mass hypnotism. You're hypnotized by the TV. So say no, at least in this respect, choosing what is good, there must be freedom. And if there's no freedom, there can be no morality. So that's the third. Metaphysical absolute. Something must be eternal. Personal mortality. And third, freedom. 4, clarity. Some things must be clear. Well, it's interesting. This is a longer question here about if we're just chemicals. Now, in the question, though, it's interesting. It distinguishes between me and the chemicals. As if there's an I distinct from the chemicals versus no, that's just what you are. So you can't make any choices apart from your chemicals. You just are your chemicals, and they just do what chemicals do. Chemicals don't think. So on that view, thinking is an illusion for the materialist. The materialist would ultimately say, yeah, thinking is just an illusion, a byproduct of some chemicals in your brain. It's not a real thing that exists that you can chart. Like thinking, you couldn't chart on the periodic table. Thinking is hydrogen plus iron, and then pop, a thought comes out. There's no such thing. So you still wouldn't have any freedom. You just are your chemicals, and chemicals obey those rules. You don't have choices. You guys are going down the road of who's popular. Poor Will Smith. Feel so bad for him. How did he get himself into that situation? So metaphysical absolute, personal mortality, freedom, clarity. If nothing's clear, there could be no morality. And we expect this out of any laws. I field questions all the time about the syllabus, right? And students will say, I had this question, and the syllabus is already like 8 pages long. So it's like, hey, you could be more clear, right? Make a 10-page syllabus. Make a 20-page syllabus and be super clear. When I started in college, the syllabus was 1 page, and it was like the amount of information was like a quarter of a page, because the way I make a syllabus now is like a single 10-point font, single spaced, right? This was a triple spaced. Just you're taking a class. I'm going to give you tests. Your grade will be based on the tests. Let's start. That's how they used to do. Now you got to have a book. So, and I still get questions. Hey, I don't understand this point on the syllabus. And yeah, if it's not clear, if it came down to it, let's say the syllabus said both we have tests and we also don't have tests. And you get an F in the class at the end of the semester. What are you going to do, you think? You going to accept it? No. Without knowing you personally, I know you. You would complain to high heaven. The syllabus contradicts itself. You would not accept that. Now, it's interesting, though. I'll be in discussion with students who are willing to accept a contradictory worldview. They'll say, yeah, that's the best we've got. That's just what physics says. It's contradictory. But they wouldn't accept a contradictory syllabus. So wait, why? That's less important than a worldview. So it must be clear. Or think about the speed limit. What if the speed limit wasn't clear? You're driving along and you see a sign on the side of the road and it's in gibberish. I don't know what those symbols are. And you get pulled over. And the policeman says, you're speeding, you're going 20 miles over. So what are you talking about? There's no speed limit. Yeah, that sign back there, that's the speed limit. The one in gibberish, yeah, that's the new letters we use for speed limit. It means 35, you're going 55. Well, I don't know what that meant. Well, that's not my fault. That's your fault for not having studied the new secret language. Wait, it's a secret language? Yeah, we don't tell anyone what the language is. Whoa. Wait, so it's in some new language, I don't know, and it's secret. You can't even learn the language. You'd complain, again, to high heaven. You take it to the Supreme Court. So it must be clear what is good. If it's not clear what is good, then there's what is skepticism, called skepticism in philosophy, which means the belief that nothing's clear. And if nothing's clear, that includes the distinction between good and evil. So when you say you see something you think is evil, you might be wrong. It might be good. It's not clear what's good and evil. And that especially comes out in persons' lives when it happens to themselves, right? Then they complain. Someone walks into class, you have a brand new iPad, you're so happy with it. They walk up, take it, put it in their backpack, and walk out. You rush after them. What are you doing? You're stealing my iPad. Well, I don't know. Maybe stealing's good. No one can know. Who's to say? It's all just confusing. I don't think you'd accept that. You say, no, stealing actually is wrong, and you just stole my iPad. Give it back. So some things must be clear. And we're going to begin with that. That if anything's clear, then, or if nothing's clear, then good and evil aren't clearly distinct. But they are clearly distinct. And then 5, the last necessary condition for morality, we would 3, freedom, 4, clarity, 5, rationality. If there's no rationality, then there could be no clarity. And if there was no clarity, we just saw there could be no morality. What is clear to reason could not have been possibly otherwise. Its contradiction is logically impossible. So you have to stop thinking to avoid seeing what is clear. You have to stop thinking to avoid seeing it. And that's what rationality means. Rationality, or reason, is the laws of thought. Reason is that by which we know anything. We might spend a little bit of time on them. In ethics class, we touch on reason a little bit, but really we have a whole class on philosophy for studying reason. So we don't hold, for example, non-rational things to moral standards. Interestingly, you would go after the person who took your iPad, but you wouldn't go after the iPad for moral problems. Like, it's the person behind it that's responsible, not the computer. Computers aren't rational. They're mimicking devices. They mimic what humans have told them to do. Complex mimicking machines. Or stone. Say a stone rolls down a mountain and crushes a house. You don't take the stone to court. Say, well, it has no assets. I mean, what if it does? What if, like, in the middle of the stone is a diamond? It has no assets, so I can't sue it. Otherwise, I would. Well, it's not. That's not the problem. The problem is it's not a thinker. It's not rational. And that these all kind of connect together, so you can see what we're talking about with a soul as well. The rational aspect of you, not the chemical aspect of you. And chemicals don't build up to reason. Like, if you combine some oxygen with some selenium, you get reason. They're different kinds of things. It's a category mistake. So rationality. Now, if there's no rationality, here's where it starts. The laws of thought, distinguishing things, like we talked about the difference between being and non-being, but those are different. You don't get one from the other. That's using reason, A and non-A. Eternal and not eternal, those are different. Good and not good, or evil, good and evil, those are different. You're using reason to distinguish things and think about the nature of them and reflect on them. That's what you do with reason. You're able to critically think, using reason to think about, what does it mean to say something's good? And what does it mean to say I ought to do something? Are there things you ought to do? And so, yeah, just going back to computers, I addressed that briefly in saying that, yeah, AI is just a mimicking machine, just mimicking what has been told by humans to do. So you could have an AI that's been told how to play chess well enough that it beats the chess master. Here's the big one. You could have an AI that's been told what to do so well, it wins at Jeopardy and beats everyone at Jeopardy. Those two things are just classical computer stuff. That's easy to do. That's the kind of thing computers do very well. Facial recognition took a long time. We do it instantly. Think of how fast you recognize a face. A nanosecond. It took a long time because computers don't do that. They crunch data. And so we had to have powerful enough computers to crunch so much data in a second that it could relatively quickly recognize faces. Whereas you just do it. But then the flip side is not true. You don't just do chess. It takes a long time to learn that. So that gives you looks into something about how computers are different than the mind or the soul, as mimicking machines, still running off of some version of 1 and 0, 1 and 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0. And you combine those into different things, and it gives you the output you want. No one would ever confuse their product with themselves. And that's been an old story. Frankenstein wasn't even the first one, but Frankenstein's a version of that story. I make something to be like me. Is it me or not? And there was a recent movie like that as well. It was just Frankenstein, but it was with a female AI robot. Frankenstein's not cute, right? He's got flesh falling off. He has stitches. What if you make a cute robot? Could that trick a person into thinking this is a human? Ex Machina, right? Is that what it was called? So that Ex Machina was just Frankenstein with a cute Frankenstein. But Ultron's a good one too. Just crunching data, coming to the wrong conclusion. Although I think Ultron actually had a better, he at least had a solution. It was somewhat like the solution that Thanos had, right? They had the same sort of solution. I don't want to get into it now, but I'm not too impressed with the Avengers solution, which just seems to be to punch people in the face. Why not? Both Ultron and Thanos seem to be open to discussing their solutions. And Captain America's answer is punch. It's like, man, you resort to violence quickly, Cap. Let's hear him out. Do you have a better solution than what they're offering? So, but we don't want to go down that road too far. Where were we? Oh yeah, rationality. That what AI is doing is mimicking, not doing rationality. And so you're able to think and distinguish good from non-good. Right? And that's usually whether it's this movie, Chappie, or there's some other ones like that. The point of change is when the AI starts in these movies, starts making moral choices. Then suddenly they have that human dimension. Star Trek Next Generation had this ongoing thing with that character Data. So yeah, there's lots of stories trying to figure out, can we make another human? Yes, the answer is yes. Did you know that? You can make another human? It's amazing. People do it a lot. They practice doing it and they actually do it quite often. For thousands of years now, they've been making other humans. So maybe what you meant was make a plastic human. Well, why would you want to do that? That sounds terrible. A plastic human? So that's exactly what the book Frankenstein's about. I don't know if you read that. You might have thought the AI thing, oh, it's so new and cutting edge. We never thought of that. No, Mary Shelley already thought of that. I think her and her husband were on a retreat with a few other poets, and they challenged each other to write stories, and that's the one she wrote. Can I get around having a husband and wife, a mom and dad? Can I get around it somehow and make a human? Right? So his solution was go get some body pieces, sew them together, electrify them, and I made a human. There you go. Why? Hey, pal, it's a lot easier. There's another way to do it, right? So that's why it has other questions then, right? Essentially, is Frankenstein working on avoiding God? God made it so that you make humans with a mom and dad. I'm going to find another way to do it. I don't need God. And so that's the backstory. And a lot of the AI stuff's the same way. God made humans like this. I'll make my own human. We don't need God. Now, is it you don't need God because there is no God, or you don't need God because there is a God and you're mad at him? Both of those themes come out, depending on which story we're looking at. Yeah, that's right. Making and putting yourself in the place of God. I agree. If there, so there might be two versions. There is no God. There's just stories about a fictional being called God, and I'm going to do what that fictional being did. Or there is a God, but he didn't make a very good world. I'm going to put myself in the place and make an even better world of just a cold AI. That'll be so much better than the world God made. So both of those. But yeah, you're right. In both cases, you're elevating yourself to that level. But the irony is, I mean, this is the irony of pride. Pride comes before the fall. You're not able to do it. So you're elevating yourself to a place you can't have, and then what you produce isn't any good and brings about your own downfall. So all this comes back to rationality. It's an exploration of what is rationality within the confines of current science fiction and past science fiction. So the question, and that's good. Yeah, that's a good question. Did God abandon his creation? Don't forget that question because we won't talk about it right now. Don't forget it because um, that's called the problem of evil, which is a big thing we need to talk about in our class. Why is there evil? Did God make the world this way? It doesn't seem to be very well made. And so where is God? Why isn't God setting it right? That's part of that. And we'll come to that. This is not the point in class where we talk about that, but we will come to that. So don't let me forget that. Um, yeah, something like that. That's what Faust tried to do also, right? So I think you mentioned Faust earlier. Now, so that's interesting to say, well, if you can do it, you should do it. Now, those don't follow. That's why we're in ethics. There's lots of things you can do that you shouldn't do. And that's part of the whole point of having rationality is to learn what those things are. What things am I able to do, but I shouldn't do? And it'd be easy to give a list of a lot of things like that, right? I can, and you fill in the blank with some atrocity, but I shouldn't do it. So it does go against your nature in that sense. It goes against your nature as an act contrary to what you were made to do. Ultimately, what we're going to see is this: the good, you put this in your notes, good is what is according to the nature of a thing. Evil, it is what is contrary to the nature of a thing, ultimately destroying it. Because if you act contrary to your nature, you stop existing as that thing. You might be something else. You've acted contrary to yourself. So an act contrary to my heart. I take it apart and it can't beat anymore like that. That's contrary to its nature. I've destroyed it. So you can do things that are contrary to your nature. You can do things that destroy you and destroy others. But that's what we're studying this semester is what are those? Because we want to avoid them. In order to know that, we got to know what is good. And in order to know that what is good, we got to know what we are. So we're back to that question. Yeah, right. That's good. Some of you know of Faust. Some of you know of Greek. So it's a good group. The telos of a thing, the nature of a being. Telos in Greek meant the end. So yes, that's what I've been talking about the whole time without speaking Greek, because then you'd go home and someone would say, what did you study in class? And you'd say, oh, it's all Greek to me. So yeah, what is the end of being a human? The purpose of being a human? No, that's good. I'm glad you brought it up. Don't apologize. I might have you. Well, I probably won't. I can reference some things for you to read in Aristotle that talk exactly about that. I don't know if we'll have it as an official reading, but I can put it up for you if you wanted to read that. Um, so, yeah, we'll come back to this. We haven't talked yet about the nature of God, but we'll come back to that. Could God have made us because we can be good and he can't? What is it to be good? If being good is to act according to the nature of a thing, then God is the very definition of good. God is good in that God gives things natures, and God acts according to his divine nature. So we've put some question marks up, but let's not forget the things we have made progress on. Something must be eternal. That doesn't get us to God yet. Something has existed without beginning. Second, the mind is continuing. Like they say, diamonds are forever. You're supposed to when you're getting engaged, you're supposed to give a diamond because they're forever, I guess. Souls are forever. I don't know if diamonds are forever. Really long time, right? Not forever. Um, so the soul is not the same as the body. Something is eternal. The soul is not the same as the body. We must have freedom. Must be clear what is good, and must have rationality. And that's the one we're ended on. And from there, here's our next question. And then I'll follow up with a few questions after this is ended. What ought I to do? That's the supreme use of reason as a human. What ought I to do? How should I live? The answer to that is called the moral law. The moral law. It's a law not, it might surprise you to call it a law because you can violate it. You might say, well, look, law, that sounds more like gravity. You can't violate the law of gravity. But it isn't. I mean, it's this sense of law. It describes what you must do to get what is good. And the other is true as well. The consequences of what happens. If you don't do this, here's what happens. So it is a law in that sense. It can't be violated. When you don't get what is good, here are the consequences. And when you do get what is good, here are the consequences. And here's the things you'd have to do to get what is good. So we're going to begin exploring that idea. What is a moral law? What ought I to do? How ought I to live? And this is a good time to study that, both in history, but also in life. What should I do with my life? What's my purpose? Where am I going? What do I want out of it? What is meaningful? All those questions kind of cluster together, right?